The last photo I have of my sister Mary is from July 1992. She and her husband James are on top of a ridge in the Cascades, beaming. She's holding up their compass, the one they were so proud of. They were supposed to be back in 3 days. For 22 years, that photo was all we had, a smiling, frozen moment before they stepped off the map. Then in October 2014, a man fly fishing in the Clearwater River 30 miles south of their trail felt a snag. It wasn't a log. It was them. If you've ever felt the ache of a question that just won't go away, this story is for you. Please let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced something similar. My name is Patricia. I'm telling this story now in 2025 because it's finally over. For more than 2 decades, it wasn't a story. It was a hole, a void in our family that we just learned to walk around. You know, it's funny what you remember. The last time I saw Mary, she was sitting on my kitchen floor, organizing freeze-dried meals into colored bags. "Patsy, you have to try this beef stroganoff," she said, shaking a silver packet. "It's actually edible." James was in the garage with my husband, double-checking the lashing on their backpacks. James was an engineer. He didn't just plan trips, he engineered them. He laminated his maps. He weighed their food down to the ounce. He and Mary were the most capable, meticulous people I knew. They weren't reckless. They were in their early 30s, in the prime of their lives. And they just loved the mountains. I laughed. "I'll take your word for it. You two have fun. Don't get eaten by a bear." "Please," James called from the garage. "We have bear spray, bear bells, and a bear canister. The bears are more likely to get annoyed by our preparedness than to eat us." Mary stood up and hugged me. She always smelled like clean laundry and something vaguely woodsy, like sandalwood. "We'll be back Sunday night. Promise to have a pizza waiting?" "Deal," I said. "Love you." "Love you too," she called back, and they were gone. Sunday night came. The pizza sat on the counter getting cold. By 9 p.m. I wasn't annoyed. I was getting that cold, prickly feeling in my stomach. By midnight, I was calling my parents. "They're fine, honey," my dad said, his voice sleepy. "James probably found a new ridge he wanted to map. They'll call in the morning." But they didn't. By Monday afternoon, we were at the ranger station. The search and rescue operation started that evening. It was efficient, clinical. They had volunteers, K-9 units, a helicopter. They found their car, a blue Subaru, parked exactly where they said it would be, at the trailhead for the Skyward Peak Loop. The trail register showed their names signed in on Friday, July 10th, 1992. Destination, Lake of Clouds. Return, July 12th. They searched for 3 weeks. For 3 weeks, my parents and I lived in a terrible motel room near the ranger station, drinking burnt coffee and watching maps get covered in red highlighter. Every time the door opened, we'd jump. Every time the phone rang, my mother would let out a little gasp. But they found nothing. Not a footprint, not a wrapper, not a broken branch. The dogs, they said, lost the scent about 3 miles up the trail, which was normal. The trail was busy. But after that, nothing. It was, as the lead ranger told us with a look of utter frustration, like they were just plucked off the mountain. You have no idea what that does to a family. After the official search was indefinitely suspended, the questions began. And they were worse than the silence. The police had to ask, "Was their marriage good, Miss Scott?" "Yes," I'd snap it. "They were perfect." "Any financial troubles? Anyone who might have wanted to harm them?" No, no. It made no sense. So the what if started. My dad, a logical man, became obsessed with the idea of a cougar. He spent nights reading about attack patterns, demanding to know why the searchers hadn't found, well, remains. My mother, on the other hand, went a different route. She started seeing psychics. One told her they had walked into a new life in Oregon. For 6 months, my dad drove to Oregon every other weekend, pinning missing person flyers to telephone poles until he finally collapsed from exhaustion. Another psychic said they were near water and white rocks. The Cascades are full of water and white rocks. I was the one haunted by the idea of foul play. The trail was remote but not empty. What if they ran into someone, some drifter in the woods? For years I scanned the news for any story about a killer in the woods, any arrest that might match. Every time the phone rang with an unknown number, my blood would freeze. But the worst what if, the one that felt like a betrayal, was the one we couldn't say out loud. What if James, the meticulous engineer, made a mistake? What if Mary, my strong, smart sister, just got lost? It didn't fit. Their personalities were the only evidence we had, and it pointed to none of this. Years turned into a decade, then two. My parents passed away, first my dad, then my mom, their grief having hollowed them out. They died not knowing. I put Mary and James's house on the market. I cleaned out their things. I found their wedding album. I found the spare set of hiking boots in their closet. I packed up that photo, the one of them on the ridge, Mary holding the compass, and put it on my own mantle. It stopped being a memory and started being a memorial. I learned to live with the not knowing. It became a scar, a part of me. And then, October 2014, 22 years later. The summer of 2014 was awful. A record-breaking drought had choked the entire state. The news was terrifying. Reservoirs looked like moon craters. Farmers were losing their land. The Clearwater River, a massive, powerful body of water that drained that whole section of the mountains, had shrunk to a fraction of its size. It was a brown, sluggish ribbon in a wide, cracked bed of stone. I was at work, a Tuesday. My phone rang, a local number I didn't recognize. "Is this Patricia Scott?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "Ma'am, my name is Detective Joseph Miles with the County Sheriff's Office. I'm with the Cold Case Division. I think you should come down to the station. We may have found something related to your sister, Mary, and her husband, James." Cold case. I had never even thought of it that way. The drive to the station was a blur. I don't remember a single turn. I walked in, and this detective, Joseph, couldn't have been more than 30. He had a kind, tired face. He wasn't a cop from 1992. He was a man who had stumbled into my life by accident. "Ms. Scott," he said gently, leading me to a small gray room. "A man was fly fishing yesterday. Because of the drought, he was wading in a section of the Clearwater River that's, well, it's normally 30 feet under." He sat me down. He snagged his net on something. He thought it was just trash, a piece of old canvas, but inside it, he found these. He slid 2 small, clear Ziploc bags across the table. My breath just stopped. Inside the bags, caked in black silt and green algae, were 2 identical brass compasses. They were tarnished, the glass on one of them cracked, but I knew them. I would have known them anywhere. "They had an anniversary gift engraved," I whispered. My hands were shaking. I couldn't touch the bags. "We cleaned a small spot on the back," Detective Joseph said. He turned one of the bags over. Through the plastic, I could see the tiny etched letters. MS 10488. And on the other, JS 10488. I hadn't realized I was crying until the detective pushed a box of tissues toward me. It wasn't sadness. It was, I don't know what it was. It was shock. It was 22 years of held breath rushing out of me at once. These things, these heavy physical objects had been with them. They were with them at the end. "Where?" I finally managed to ask. "Where did he find them?" Detective Joseph pulled out a map. He had the skyward peak loop circled in red where the search had been. Then his finger traced a line. Down, down, down the map. "Here," he said, tapping a spot. "In the Clearwater River, about 30 miles southeast of their trailhead." I stared at him. 30 miles? That's impossible. Their car was at the loop. Why would they be 30 miles away? How? The old what-ifs came rushing back. Did someone take them? Did they drive them there? But the compasses were in a backpack. Detective Joseph looked at me, and his eyes weren't just kind anymore. They were curious. That's what I'd like to find out, he said. Do you want to help me? The fisherman's name was Richard. He was an older man, retired, with a face weathered like river rock. He met us, me and Detective Joseph, at a dusty turnout by the river the next morning. The air was cool, and the sky was a pale, washed-out blue. Detective, Richard said, nodding. He looked at me, his eyes full of apology. Ma'am, I'm real sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for, I told him, though my voice trembled. You found them. He led us down a steep, eroded bank of dirt and exposed tree roots. I've fished this river my whole life, he said, his voice echoing in the quiet. Never seen it this low. Never. See that line of dark rock up there? That's the normal water level. It was terrifying. We were walking on the riverbed. It was a graveyard of bleached logs, rusted metal, and smooth gray stones. I was right out there, he said, pointing to a cluster of massive boulders in what was usually the middle of the channel. Standing on that flat rock, cast my line and it snagged hard. He walked us over. I figured it was a sunk log. I waded over, and I saw this piece of old canvas, green canvas, stuck between these two rocks. It was mostly just mush. I pulled my net free, and these were in it. They must have fallen out of a pocket when I yanked the net. He pointed down into the crevice between the boulders. The rest of the bag, it's still down in there, what's left of it. Detective Joseph got down on his hands and knees, shining a bright flashlight into the dark, wet gap. It's wedged in tight, he said. Looks like it's been there a very, very long time. The fabric just rotted away around the heavy stuff. The compasses, heavy brass sinking straight to the bottom while the rest of the pack was torn away or disintegrated. A search team arrived. This time it wasn't volunteers with bright orange vests. It was a forensics team. They spent 2 days documenting the site, pulling the rotted fragments of a backpack from the rocks. It was, forensics confirmed, a North Face backpack, a model from the early 90s. It was James's, but it didn't solve the main question. It only made it bigger. They didn't walk here, Joseph said back in his office. We had maps spread out everywhere. Their car was at the trailhead, 30 miles over that terrain. It's impassable. We're talking sheer cliffs, dense forest. You can't hike from Skyward Peak to the Clearwater River. So the foul play theory, I started. It's possible, he said, but it doesn't feel right. A killer who hikes 30 miles, dumps a bag, but leaves the car. It's messy. And why? There's no logic. Logic. That was the word. James and Mary were all about logic. We're missing a piece, I said, on something from 1992. The original searchers were thorough, Joseph said. They covered that loop. They found nothing. Then they were searching in the wrong place, I said. If the answer is here, I tapped the river on the map, then the event must have happened somewhere that connects to here. I went home that night and I dug. I pulled out my own box of Mary's things, the one I hadn't opened in a decade. Old letters, her college diploma, some cassette tapes, and at the bottom her hiking journal. It was empty. She had bought it for the 1992 trip, but tucked inside the back cover was a folded piece of paper. It was a photocopy of the topo map for their trip, and on it, in James's tiny, precise handwriting, were notes. He had marked their planned route in red, but then there was a second faint line in blue. It led off the main trail down the eastern slope of the ridge and had a question mark next to it. Next to the question mark, he had written, "Shelter route, check Devil's Draw." I felt a jolt. I had never seen this before. I had no idea what Devil's Draw was. I called Joseph at, I realized, 2 a.m. He answered on the first ring. "Devil's Draw." he said, his voice suddenly wide awake. I see it. It's a gully, a dry creek bed, really. It's on the east side of Skyward Ridge. It's not a trail. Why would they go there, Pa? I asked. To get off the ridge, he said, fast. Why would they need to get off the ridge? There was a pause. Patricia, he said, I'm going to look at the weather reports from that week, not the forecasts, the actual reports. I met him at the county archives the next day. We spent hours scrolling through microfiche, pulling dusty almanacs. The official forecast for Friday, July 10th, 1992 was clear and warm, highs in the 80s. But then Joseph found it, a logbook from a fire lookout tower about 50 miles south of Skyward Peak, the entry for 3:15 p.m. on July 10th. Sudden, unforecasted microburst, severe lightning and hail, winds estimated at 70 mph, storm localized to the northern ridges, lasted 45 minutes, dangerous. I put my hand over my mouth. The photo, the last photo, they were on top of that ridge, beaming. They're on the ridge, I whispered, the scene playing out in my head. It's July. It's beautiful. And then this thing comes over the mountain. A microburst, Joseph said, his voice grim. They're on the most exposed part of the mountain. Lightning is striking all around them. They're experienced. What do? They get low, I said. They get off the high ground, fast. They run for the quickest shelter route to Sa, Joseph said, tapping the map I'd brought. The one James had marked. Devil's Draw, a gully. It's the perfect place to hide from lightning. My blood ran cold. A gully, I said. In a storm, a microburst. Joseph looked at me. He didn't have to say it. A sudden violent storm, a dry gully. A flash flood, I said. All that rain funneled into one narrow channel. Joseph traced the line on the map. His finger started at Devil's Draw, which snaked down the mountain. It fed into a larger creek, which then, it feeds directly into the Clearwater River, Joseph finished. They weren't 30 miles off route because they were walking. They were 30 miles off route because they were carried. The not knowing was gone, and in its place was a horror I could barely comprehend. The search changed instantly. It wasn't a cold case anymore, it was a recovery mission. But the new search area was a 30-mile-long gully and river system. The compasses were heavy, Joseph explained to the new team. They sank and got wedged in the rocks when the floodwaters hit the main river and slowed down. But the victims, they could be anywhere along this route. But it's been 22 years, one of the teams said. Landslides, debris. The drought is our only shot, Joseph said, but the water is low. But we're not just searching the river, we're searching the banks, the embankments, places where the 1992 flood might have deposited them. For a week I sat in Joseph's truck, parked where Devil's Draw met the main road. I watched teams with cadaver dogs work their way up the gully. I watched dive teams search the deep, dark pools of the Clearwater that hadn't evaporated. It was agonizing. It was so much worse than the first search. In 1992, we were looking for people. We were looking for survivors. In 2014, I was just waiting for a bone. On the 8th day, the call came over Joseph's radio. A dog team, working a high eroded embankment about 5 miles downstream from where the gully opened up, had gotten a hit. Joseph looked at me. Stay here. I didn't. I followed him. We had to hike for a mile, scrambling over dry, cracked mud and fallen trees. This whole area, Joseph explained, was normally a marsh, a stagnant part of the river. Now it was just a field of dead reeds. The team was standing in a circle, looking down at a spot where a large tree's roots had been completely exposed by the receding water. The roots had created a kind of natural net. The team leader, a woman with a grim, set face, looked at Joseph. We found something. I pushed past, and I saw it. It was a color, a flash of faded, dirty green tangled in the roots. That's her jacket, I said. I didn't even realize I'd spoken. It's Mary's, her windbreaker. It was green. The team began to dig, gently, with their hands, then with small trowels. The green jacket, it was wrapped around something. The remains were fragmented, scattered by the water and time, and protected by the dense tangle of roots. They found a hiking boot, a large one, James's, and with it they found them. It wasn't Mary and James anymore, not really. It was what the river had left behind. The coroner's report was definitive. Dental records. It was them. The cause of death was listed as massive trauma and drowning, consistent with a flash flood. They had run from the lightning right into the water. It was over. It's been almost 11 years since that day. It's 2025. The drought broke long ago. The Clearwater River is full and powerful again, rushing over the boulders where Richard found the compasses. The eroded bank where they found Mary and James is back underwater. It's all hidden again. But it's not a question anymore. We held a funeral, a real one. My husband and I, our children, who had only known their aunt and uncle as a sad story and a picture on the mantel. We buried them in the family plot next to my parents. I finally got to give my mom and dad the answer they died waiting for. I put 2 things in the casket. The first was that photo from 1992. The second was the brass compass, the one with MS on the back, which the sheriff's department gave back to me. For 22 years, I looked at that photo and I saw terror. I saw the smiling faces of 2 people walking into an ambush. I saw the arrogance of a man, James, who I thought got them lost. I saw the naivete of my sister for following him. But now I see something different. I see a photo of my sister and her husband on a beautiful day, doing the one thing they loved more than anything else. They were together. They were happy. And then something random and terrible, something that was no one's fault, happened. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a mistake. It was just nature. It was just a storm. The knowing is heavy. It's a weight I carry every day. But it's so much better than the void. It's not a hole anymore. It's a grave. And a grave is a place you can visit. A grave is a place you can leave flowers. For 22 years, my family was haunted by the what if. But when the truth finally came, it was just as painful, only in a different way. What do you think is worse, living with the not knowing or finding a truth that breaks your heart? Subscribe if you believe every lost story deserves to be found.